The Bob Murphy Show, episode 141.
There's a tidal wave coming. What you gonna do?
Get ready for another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. It's your source for commentary and interviews conducted by a Christian and economist. Now here's your host, Bob Murphy.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of The Bob Murphy Show. This is going to be another fun interview. I'm talking with Dan Sanchez, who is Director of Content at the Foundation for Economic Education, or FEE, and he's also the editor of fee.org. And the immediate discussion is based on Dan's recent article at FEE, where he's talking about how DC wants to, quote, fix Superman because, he's too perfect. And the actual title of Dan's article is How to Make Superman Relevant. And so Dan disagrees with the conventional explanation that, the reason the Superman movies lately aren't working is that, he's just too perfect. And so audiences can't relate. We got to make him brooding and dark and, full of self-doubt so regular people. And Dan thinks, no, that's not at all what you need to do to fix the Superman movies. And here's what you do need to do. So we talk about that. You may remember, and I'm going to link to all this stuff, folks, at bobmurphyshow.com/141, where he and I talked about his response to the movie, the Joker movie that just recently came out, and how Jordan Peterson actually could help the Joker if the Joker were real. And so anyway, it's a fun conversation. So if you haven't watched Superman movies, it's probably not for you. But on the other hand, let me stress, if you have watched the Superman movies and you're someone who listens to the Bob Murphy Show, then you definitely do want to listen to this one. We really get into some deep stuff, I think, in this episode. I was really happy with how the conversation turned out. Last thing I'll mention is Dan alludes to a clip. So he included it in his original article that somebody, when they were watching the Infinity War, the Endgame Avengers movie, and there's a clip in there, and someone, from in the theater got a bootleg version, and you get the audience reaction. If you liked those movies, then I would strongly encourage you to stop listening to this right now and go to the show notes page, again, bobmurphyshow.com/141, and click on and watch the video. Unless you're watching this on YouTube, in which case, unless there's copyright things and they make me take it out, I'll try to embed it directly. But my point is, if you're listening to the audio of this, just for continuity's sake and whatever, we're going to include the audio in the clip, but it really doesn't do it justice. You kind of have to see it to see exactly what the audience is seeing on the screen. So then when you hear their reaction, you know exactly what they're reacting to, and you get all fired up. Want to go out and battle Keynesians or something. So in any event, like I say, do yourself a favor. If that sounds appealing to you and you like those Avengers movies, you're going to really like watching this clip in terms of the video, not just hearing the audio that Dan and I will talk about in a minute. Before we dive in, two quick other things, folks. Number one is pay attention deep into the episode. I asked Dan the classic question about DC versus Marvel in particular. Why is it the Marvel movies are great and the DC ones just don't seem to be hitting? And I offer a theory, and the reason I want you to pay attention to that is because coming soon, I have Eric July on, and I pose the same question to him. And let me just give you a hint. It's sort of like a study guide to the Bob Murphy Show. Eric's answer is the exact opposite of what I am going to say to Dan in this one. And upon further reflection, I think Eric is right. All right. So anyway, just keep that in mind. Keep your ears open. And the other thing is, in the show notes page, I'm going to include a bunch of links to excerpts from the various Superman films that Dan and I discuss. And in particular, I told Dan that there's handcuffs on Superman in the one scene, and he didn't remember that. Of course there are. All right. So I put the links in there in case you want to go see the things I'm talking about. So that's all, again, at bobmurphyshow.com/141. And now here we go with my discussion with Dan Sanchez. Well, Dan, welcome back to the Bob Murphy Show.
Hi, Bob. Nice to talk to you again.
You are one of the few people, I know I had Scott Horton on at least twice, and maybe you're definitely one of the few people who've come back. And the key is, for those who want to get on the show multiple times, just keep writing about superheroes. That's how you get on the show.
Right.
So
We
last
need
time,
a two-time club like the SNL's club for
yeah,
5 times.
right, exactly. So yeah, last time you were on, because you wrote this fascinating article about what Jordan Peterson, like the analysis he could do, how he could have helped the Joker, when that movie came out. And then, so now we're talking about, you had an article in Fee. Of course, folks, we'll link to this. It's bobmurphyshow.com/141 is where to find all these links, where you were taking on the popular view that, the problem with Superman is he's too perfect. And so there's a narrative there. And you were explaining why, no, that's not the issue. So why don't you take the reins and just summarize what you are attacking in your article, and then we can just have a fun conversation from there.
Sure. Yeah. So I really kind of think society needs a rescue right now. There's a lot of crazy stuff going on. 2020 is like trying to combine like 1918 and 1938 and 1969 all in like 1 year. And I think that Superman could help us. So it's kind of a shame that he's kind of fallen by the wayside in popular imagination, because he's helped us before. In 1938, when he debuted, he was hugely successful and hugely popular as a figure of hope amid the Great Depression. And in World War II, he was immensely popular with the GIs, and they found solace and hope and imagination in reading his adventures. And then in 1978, in the malaise that Carter talked about, Superman's movie was hugely inspirational to a lot of people. And there was kind of an attempt of bringing Superman back, but there were kind of a lot of disappointments. So most of the movies have kind of, the studios have not, both in terms of box office, but mostly just in terms of audience reactions, that just didn't find him very compelling. And so the typical response to that is like, the problem is Superman as a character, that he's too perfect, both power, in terms of power, that doesn't have enough vulnerabilities, and so that's not interesting. And in terms of morality, that the idea that like, nobody likes to see a story about someone who's just so untouchably perfect morally. And so they try to give him feet of clay. They power him down physically, but then they also weaken him morally. And I think
hang on. So can you be specific? I don't want to put you on the spot, but so I'm tracking everything you're saying. Like, this all resonates with me, and I agree with you wholeheartedly. But do you like? Can you give examples? Like, there was the one. What was the one? And I should have done more research on this to refresh my memory that make the movies right. What was the one where Kevin Spacey was Lex Luthor?
That was Superman Returns, I think.
Okay, because that was the one where where he just goes up and like punches Superman, and Superman falls down or something because they're standing on the island of Kryptonite or something like that.
Yeah, he gets thrashed because of Kryptonite.
And something about that scene bothered me. Like, it didn't seem like that's the way it would. I don't know if you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, but I mean, it was kind of, in other words, in the Superman with Gene Hackman and Christopher Reeve, like that one, as soon as he opens this, Gene Hackman cleverly fools him and, like glances at the safe and says, don't go in there. And then he opens it and there's a crypto. And Superman right away is weak and fallen over. Whereas in this one, it was just goofy. It was like Superman lands and he doesn't know anything's wrong until Lex Luthor beats the crap out of him. It's like, you didn't notice that you were getting hit with kryptonite? So...
Yeah, and I think there's an important distinction between those two themes, scenes, because, I mean, kryptonite has always been part of the canon of Superman. Right, and so even when he was like, a demigod in powers, like kryptonite was always his Achilles heel. But there's a difference, because in the more recent movie, it wasn't good enough for him to just have that Achilles heel trap sprung and then like, almost die because of it. He had to like be humiliatingly beaten, which didn't happen in the 1978 movie. And that's pretty common. Like in a lot of depictions of Superman, they just make him a punching bag now. Like even without kryptonite, they just have villains just like I remember in the Justice League cartoon, it was always like whenever there was a blast, it always had to hit Superman. Like and like he was always like grunting and like crying in agony from being like electroshocked, and it was always him that got the the main brunt of any attack, and I think that like I think that is sort of a way of trying to knock him down a peg and make him more interesting, but I don't think it works.
So I hijacked the conversation. So can you give us an example of what you mean when you said they powered him down? Like what do you mean?
Yeah, so they really in the comics they powered him down in the 80s. Like he used to have like cosmic powers where he could juggle planets and stuff like that. It was more kind of a almost like folk tales in the 50s and 60s that kids just loved. Like that was the peak of his popularity in the comics. And then in the 70s and in the 80s, throughout comics, they tried. There was this movement of realism, of just wanting to make things more gritty and more realistic. So the more like fantasy stuff, they got rid of that, and part of that was really depowering Superman down, and so then in the comics too, it was just this recurring thing where he was just constantly getting beaten, and he wasn't as powerful. Like he couldn't do as many amazing things, and so that was a way of trying to make him more interesting.
So I do know what you mean. I noticed that yeah, like so I guess we're similar in age. Like the movies we grew up with, the Christopher Reeve, Gene Hackman ones, like basically Superman 1 and 2, and then it got kind of silly. Mm-hmm. But in those ones, you're right. Like so the first one. Yeah, I mean, there's kryptonite was because how else are you going to deal with it? But even there, it was just a one-shot thing where it's just a brief period of the movie where, he's weak and then, Miss Tessmacher jumps in the pool and saves him, showing like, oh, it's because of his character. That's why, that he was rescued, not his superpowers. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like when I read because I didn't read the comics very much. But yeah, when I did get them and read through them, I was kind of surprised that, in the comic books, bad guys can beat the crap out of Superman. You know what I mean? Like he doesn't die, except when he did. But it's, there's ones that can hold their own. Whereas in the movies, it was only somebody else from Krypton could possibly hold their own against Superman. Otherwise, he's just head and shoulders above. Like that's not the issue. The issue is how does he deal with a world of like, in other words, he's so far above the humans in the first Superman movie, it's unthinkable that he would like kill Lex Luthor. Like that would be a horrible sin in his mind. You know what I mean? Because he's so far above humans that he couldn't use violence against them. So anyway, so I noticed what you're talking about. That the Superman in the comics was not as the stories were different. It was more like he was just a really strong person, not this thing that was like qualitatively higher than everybody he interacted with.
Yeah, and there's a connection between like the physical power and the moral power, because classically he would be depicted as someone who was so competent and capable and strong and powerful that he didn't need to kill.
Right.
That he could defeat the enemies without stooping to their level, and that he would save Lois Lane, that he would save people. And that's another like common trope in the current depictions, is that he's always too late. Like Superman is classically like in the nick of time, like he swoops in and he saves people. But now it's like there's always mass casualties and even worse, all those mass casualties are partially because of his own hesitancy to act, to use his powers. That, like, especially in the Snyder movies, the more recent movies, he's depicted as like really internally conflicted, and there's the conflict between his Kryptonian father, who told him to really use his powers to help humanity, and his Earth father, who cautioned him to not do that, and so it's like this struggle, and so and it's understandable, because in a lot of stories, like, that's the interesting part of it, are these struggles and these tensions, and then eventually the resolution of those tensions. But I think what they miss is that that's not the only kind of story, that there's another kind of more aspirational hero story that goes back to the ancient myths, where the hero, as like a platonic ideal of heroism, who doesn't have that conflict, and who doesn't need to fail catastrophically the way that, like, Spider-Man fails when he lets his Uncle Ben die in order to succeed. That's another kind of story, and that can be equally as powerful.
Right. So you're right. Yeah, I'm thinking through it, because it's in Superman 2, for example, where he's against the 3 Kryptonians. They're fighting in New York, and that's like the movie's building up to that, right? And finally he lands outside, and he's like, "General Zod, would you care to step outside?" And everyone's like, "Oh, yes." But very soon, like, just a little bit of damage, and then they like turn the bus and throw it at him, and he gets up and looks around, and he flies away because he realizes, I can't fight them in New York City because somebody's going to get hurt. Mm-hmm. Whereas he is able to isolate, and then they go, fight him up in Fortress of Solitude, and so he takes the battle there. Whereas, is it still Superman Return? What's the one? Sorry, I should have done the research.
Man of Steel.
Man of Steel is the one where, like, Kevin Costner's his father?
Yeah.
Okay. So that one, New York just gets obliterated at the end. And then is that also the one where he has to, like, use his heat vision and kills General Zod or something?
Oh, he breaks his neck.
Or he breaks his... Oh, because is it General Zod that's using his heat vision? And he's got to snap his neck before he kills... Right, so that one, you're right. It's his limitations. He can't contain the situation. People are dying. Buildings are getting smashed. And, he comes to a moral dilemma and finally, does something dubious because, what else could I do? Because I couldn't contain the situation. So, anyway, that is interesting. I hadn't thought that through. Because I noticed the difference, but I hadn't thought through that. Okay, are they doing that deliberately to say, oh, this is a more realistic? Like, isn't this more interesting now? Like, Superman isn't in charge. Like, he lost control of the situation.
Right. I mean, it's such a grim telling, because it's like, when Superman in the 1978 movie, when he first makes his debut, it's when he saves Lois Lane from a helicopter crash.
Right.
And so it's this, like, glorious, awe-inspiring, saving day. And the cape is fluttering and everybody's looking up. And
he walks out and the guy's like, "Whoa, that's a bad outfit." Whoa. And he's like, "Excuse me, sir."
Right.
Like just showing he's still, like, super polite as Clark. You know what I mean? Like, "Excuse me, sir. I gotta go do something."
Whereas in the Man of Steel, the first people to even see him are not even the public. Like when he makes his debut, it's after the other Kryptonians have already invaded, basically, mm-hmm. and are threatening the world. And so then when he reveals himself, it's to military personnel. He offers his help to like the military industrial complex, mm-hmm. and they're the first ones to see him. So it's like it's in this grimy milieu of just, like, national security.
Yeah, is that like where he goes and presents himself and they arrest him, like put handcuffs on him or something? Or am I getting mixed up?
I don't remember the handcuffs, but they are very wary of him.
Right, because isn't it that the Kryptonians basically take Earth hostage and say, we'll leave you alone, but we want Kal-El to be delivered to us? Am I mixing plot lines up?
That happened. I'm not sure if that's the right sequence, but yeah, but it's I think they do put him in cuffs, but yeah, it's like this foreboding national security drama, like in these like dark halls, as opposed to flying up in the sky and like doing wondrous things that are inspiring and awe-inspiring to the public. And then like when he actually makes his debut to the public, like when it's seen writ large, it's in amid atrocity. Like, I mean, it looks like 9/11 footage with these buildings collapsing and just mass casualties. And so it's like this huge public social trauma that the public is their first experience with Superman.
Well, yeah, whereas in the 78 one, so it's been building, because his dad did give him advice in that movie where, like he shows off with the football team or whatever, and he's, I ran home, and they're like, oh, whatever, Clark, what a weirdo. And his dad's like, been showing off, haven't you, son? And, he's like, is it showing off when a bird flies or something? And he says, I know you're put here for a reason, and it wasn't to score touchdowns. And so, the dad the earthly dad, doesn't know exactly why it was, but he knows you have powers, you're supposed to do something with them, and I don't know exactly what, but it's got to be big. Right. And so, then he goes up to the Fortress of Solitude, he learns who he is. Jor-El gives him all this instruction, it's forbidden for you to interfere with human history, rather let your leadership stir others to action, he's giving all this stuff. And then, it's building up, and then Lois Lane up there, that's when he decides, okay, now's the time. I got to reveal myself to the world. He saves her. He saves a 747 or something. He goes and gets a cat out of a tree and gives it to a little kid. I mean, he just does all these amazing, social PR things that everyone's like, wow, what a nice guy.
Yeah.
And he's got superpowers.
So like you point out, his dads agreed. Like they were basically giving him the same lesson that you have a responsibility to use your powers to help people, as opposed to in Man of Steel, where there was this conflict. And so the dads kind of represent like parts of his conscience. And so the original, the 1978 movie, by having the dads agree, it's like his like soul is integrated. Like he's not riven by this like intense internal conflict, that he's whole and integrated, from the beginning, basically. And then it's like, okay, that's an ideal of a certain, of human virtue and goodness and excellence. And it's like, okay, well, how would that play out in the world? And that's, interesting. That's an interesting story. And that's the Superman story. So there's nothing wrong with stories that involve inner conflicts, but that's not the strength of Superman. That's not what matches with the way he carries himself and his persona and his just like what he symbolizes in our imagination. And I think that's why these like Hamlet versions of Superman are falling flat with people.
Have you seen, Dan, the old black and white, I think the guy's name is George Reeves, Superman TV show?
Yes.
Where like he'll be, facing and he'll just be standing like this and bullets will be bouncing and he'll just be like, ha ha ha, like that's like, he's almost like cocky, but it's very reassuring. Like when he shows up, it's like Mighty Mouse, here I come to save the day. Like, okay, phew, everything's fine when he shows up.
Right.
And he's real, you don't have to worry that, is he like a corrupt cop or something? Like, it's just clear he's going to be fine, and you don't have to worry, is he going to go too far and use excessive force on the bad guy? No, of course he's not, because he's so far above them that, everything's going to be fine. And so you're right, like that, the movies captured that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the one asterisk is, it did bother me at the end of Superman 2 when they kill all the Kryptonians when they had their powers removed.
Yeah, I've read that might be a little bit ambiguous, that that
maybe they didn't die.
Yeah, it wasn't always completely clear that when they fall,
Right.
that they fell into like a lethal abyss. That that maybe it was like, just somewhere where they would get trapped or something. But yeah, that is a good point.
I hope that's what it was supposed to be. But yeah, clearly they made it open ended, and you weren't sure what happened. But
right.
Certainly, I as a little kid watching that thought they were dead. So
right.
And then I thought, actually, Lois Lane just murdered that woman because she said, "You know what? You're a pain in the neck," and slugs her, and she falls. And all right,
yeah.
Okay, so that's the conventional, and so that didn't work. So you're saying, okay, is the number one that was in your article? You're saying that's not your guys are doing it wrong. Like that's not what you're supposed to do with the Superman story, and so that's why this isn't working. And then I thought you had a brilliant way of demonstrating that, because someone could be like, "Oh no, Dan, you're living in the past. We couldn't just keep remaking that kind of movie. That worked in 1978, but it wouldn't work now because Americans are jaded and they want to have heroes who are conflicted." And you had a pretty good counterexample.
Yeah, Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think he demonstrates that the kind of character that Superman traditionally is still has resonance, and will always have resonance with people, because Captain America is every bit the Boy Scout as Superman traditionally is.
Right. He chastises Iron Man for swearing when they're going into battle.
Right. And he's not. He doesn't have that. Like he does learn. He does evolve, and even gets disillusioned about like the government and things like that. But his moral compass throughout is always steady, and like it's just a realization that the moral compass of others that he thought was also steady, that those weren't.
Right.
And so then it leads him into conflict with them because he's pursuing what he thinks is right, but he's not like struggling with completely opposing impetuses within himself about what's basically moral and what's basically decent, and so there's this scene in Avengers 2 where he where they're taking turns trying to lift Thor's hammer, because the legend of the story of Thor's hammer is that it's enchanted so that only the worthy can lift it, and with the idea that only Thor is so worthy, only a god would be so worthy, and so they're all taking turns, and even like the ones with super strength that they can't lift it, and then Cap moves it, and then it budges, and then like Thor is like kind of like worried for a second.
Right.
And the joke there is that well, everybody knows that Captain America is a Boy Scout, that if anyone is worthy, that it would be him, because he's so morally pure, and so they gently rib him about that, like Loki impersonates him, and in as a sort of a Dudley Do-Right type figure, but it's always a gentle ribbing, and in general he's just that's just the way he is, that he's not like mocked for it, he's not shown to be like retrograde or archaic because of it. In fact, that he is continually validated for his stalwart dedication to his moral principles, because he keeps being shown standing up to those who are pushing him to compromise, and against all odds, winning the day, coming through, inspiring others to join him, and then ultimately being victorious. And it's worth noting that his his movies were really successful, like even like among MCU movies in general, which have just made billions of dollars, that his franchise was super successful. And I think that's a testament to this, to refuting this notion that those kinds of values don't have an appeal with modern audiences.
Right. And just so a few points on that. So one is, it's not merely that his movies, like in terms of the Captain America movies then versus the other types, did well, but even in the Avengers, when there's the whole ensemble, like he steals certain scenes. Like he's clearly one of the favorite characters. So one thing is when I saw in, which one was it? What's the one? I'm getting the movies mixed up. It was the android guy and his girlfriend, the witch, were like getting attacked by the Thanos's henchmen, and it was like after the Civil War. So Captain America had been in hiding, but then
that was in Infinity War.
Okay, Infinity. Okay, yeah, is that so? They're like, how they're getting ambushed.
Yeah.
And then, it doesn't look good. And then they throw it, and somebody catches it or something. And then you realize it's Captain America. And like the audience that I saw it when just went nuts. They were like, it's Cap, and so like he was clearly one of the favorite. And I saw it in Houston. I mean, not that Houston's a big city of rabble rousers, but I mean, it wasn't like I saw it in some rural town in Idaho. Like I saw it in a big theater in a city, you know what I mean? And those people were all fired up for him. And then we'll try. I think this will work to include this. This clip is so good, Danny. Even if I have to demonetize this episode, I'm going to do it because I want people to see this. You embedded this clip in your thing, so why don't you just explain what it is? And hopefully, I guess for those who are, you'll be able to hear it, folks, even if you're listening to the audio. But you should go see the video. So this is bobmurphyshow.com/141 if you want to see the YouTube version, or just I'll link to it separately. But just explain what this clip is before we play it.
Sure. So Thor and Thanos are fighting, and Thor has like a new hammer, and Thanos is like about to shove, like it's kind of like a hammer and an axe, and Thanos is about to like shove the axe into Thor and about to kill him, but all of a sudden Thor's other older hammer, Mjolnir, the one that's enchanted so that only the worthy can lift it, strikes Thanos and saves Thor's life. And then like, Mjolnir always returns to Thor. He throws it and it magically returns to him. And so you see it returning, and then you see that it returns to Captain America. And then you see him holding the hammer. And so this clip that just went absolutely viral, it has that scene, and then it has like the audience reaction in the audio, and they just lose it. Like, it's just like
right. So it's like a bootleg. Someone filmed that in the theater watching this thing when the movie first came out.
Yeah, or I think it was originally that, but I think someone did like a higher quality where it was just like maybe the actual footage and then just.
Oh, okay. But I'm saying that's what the audience reaction is. It's the audience watching that. Yeah.
Right. And like, yeah, it's just an uproarious just expression of just like joy that you hear from this audience, at this moment, and then Thor.
So here, let's go ahead and play the clip.
Okay.
All right. So now go ahead.
Yeah. So then that part where Thor says, like, I knew it. It's like he's like speaking for all of us. Like we all knew that that he is worthy, that he's got to be worthy, and so that then you see him like twirling it and doing tricks with his shield and the hammer, and then like shooting lightning bolts with it, and the audience just loved it. They found it so inspiring, and I think again it's because it's a validation and of his upstanding decency, and there people also love Tony Stark and Iron Man, and he's a totally different character. He's much more flawed, and what we love about seeing him is seeing him redeem himself and seeing him grow. But again, that's not the only kind of character. That the Captain America character makes for really good storytelling too.
Right. So I'm glad you put it that way, because that's what I was going to say. Where I do eventually want to go with this is to say, I think the mistake that the DC writers were making is they were trying to make Superman follow the pattern. Like they looked at the success of the Iron Man movies and were like, oh, we got to have characters like that, not realizing, no, Captain America is the model for Superman. Batman is the model for, or Iron Man's the model for Batman, if you were going to go that way. You know what I mean? Like the brooding, besides the other obvious similarities of, billionaires who, build cool stuff to enhance their, the fact that they're just normal humans. And so, yeah, that's if you want to make the analogy. So the point being that it's true, a character who's brooding and, morally dubious, and, because Batman does stuff like, Batman does things that Superman wouldn't do. And so, and you could say, well, partly because he has to, because he's not as strong as Superman, but also, just whatever his background. So yes, they're right that a character like that will work. But the point is, you don't do that with Superman. Just like if Captain America all of a sudden started swearing and got hammered and stuff like that, meaning drinking, not using Thor's hammer, that it wouldn't be like, oh, this is a side of Cap we've never seen. How interesting. It would be like, no, that's not who Captain America is. What the heck are they doing? Right. Okay, so a couple other things I want to say is, I think, how do you feel about, given the way you're saying how the character works, I think it's really important that Captain America's iconic tool is a shield, as opposed to like a powerful gun or something. Like I think that that makes him more. So it's not that he never kills somebody. And I'm sure he probably killed a bunch of Nazis in the World War II versions, but you get what I'm saying? Like it's more like he's less. Like everybody can be like, oh, how could you not like the guy? Like when he goes into battle, it's mostly with a shield to like protect against enemy onslaught.
Yeah, I think there is something about that symbolism. Like Superman's S looks like a shield. And so, there's something about that shape that conveys solidity and strength, but it also conveys protection, and as opposed to, aggression and just, just wanting to waste people,
Right. And what he does, so his character, when he's like, I could do this all day, whether he's a little pipsqueak or Captain America standing up against Thanos when he thought it was just him. Like he was the only one left to protect Earth from him. And he just gets up, his shield's broken and he's all grimy. But his point is, no, I'm always going to stand until I'm dead. I will always stand like firm to absorb the onslaught. Like that's what
right.
he does.
And that's why, like, another scene that he stole was that scene, because, then when, it seems that all hope is lost, that, his shield is broken. He's the last man standing. It's him against Thanos' entire army just marching towards him. But he still doesn't give up. He still, just does what's right, and he just marches forward, even though that it seems like it's a lost cause. And then all of a sudden he hears this faint voice in his earpiece, and it's Falcon. It's his ally, who had, who's like, a whole bunch of heroes had basically been like resurrected. And then you see like basically like a cavalry charge of like, his friend, and then just a whole army of like all the Avengers and all these superheroes from all the Marvel movies coming out of these portals and backing him up. And so again, it's like it's such an awesome, thrilling validation of his stalwart insistence on doing what's right, no matter the consequences, that it being, just it being validated as being the wise course of action, because, all these people that he's inspired, have gotten his back and have saved him. And yeah, that was just another part of the movie that those two parts of the movie probably got like the biggest cheers of the whole end game. Yeah.
While you're talking about that, I have to note, why didn't Doctor Strange have those portals open up behind the enemy lines? Like,
that's a good point.
I mean, far be it from me. I mean, maybe he looked at all the different scenarios and thought, oh no, we'd be shooting at each other. So I don't know, but
yeah,
just seems to me. Throw that out there. So another thing too. So like, I think the real lesson is that somebody with the acting like the Boy Scout. A movie about Ned Flanders would not work, right? That would be it'd go really fast. You'd want a Homer, But so the difference is, it's not merely that Captain America, has this upstanding moral code. It's that he's super brave and he has all these amazing powers. So and the same thing with Superman. It's the combination that, he's got his amazing powers, and then it's coupled with, his upstanding moral code. And so I'm thinking of the movie Hacksaw Ridge. Have you seen that?
No.
Okay, so that's the Mel Gibson movie about the guy's name is Desmond Doss. He was a pacifist who served as a medic in World War II, and it's a fantastic movie. Like you really should go see it.
Yeah.
Or get it. You're not going to go see it. And it's a similar thing where in the beginning, his pacifist. What, are you kidding me? Oh yeah, we'll just tell the Japanese that we don't believe in guns and we'll be fine. Just making fun of them and mocking them. So, but I don't want to spoil it. But he does some stuff that's incredibly heroic. So then from that point on, nobody's doubting him. Like they get like, oh, he's the real deal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think that's part of it. That it's like with Captain America, it's like he proves that, no, I really am living up to these ideal. It's not just like something that I do because I want society to like me. It's like, no, he really is the Boy Scout.
Yeah.
Like in other words, if you were really in danger or you were about to freeze to death out in the woods, you would want a Boy Scout with you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's only in situations where their skills are useless that you make fun of someone for being a Boy Scout.
Yeah. Yeah. Larry Reed actually has a really great article about Hacksaw Ridge on fee.org. And I think there's another important distinction though between Ned Flanders and Captain America. And that is that like Ned Flanders is like super, judgmental. And whereas like, Captain America and Superman are not, and I think that touches on one issue that people have with these characters and why so many creators assume that these characters won't do well. And that is this notion that excellence in itself is judgmental. And so I talk about this in my article because there's this one Forbes piece that talks about that DC is struggling to make Superman relevant to modern audiences because his godlike powers and righteous attitude are alienating for modern audiences. And I think that assumption is based on how we as a society, or at least some sectors of society, have come to look at being super. I write in my article that that according to a common worldview, many forms of being super are often considered not admirable but suspect, not worthy of emulation but of resentment, not a source of inspiration but of envy. And so, you see that in like the way that entrepreneurs and the rich are treated, that people who try to encourage healthy habits and like just wise habits about like behaving like saving money and working hard and trying to do right by people, that those are considered as sort of like archaic values, and they're seen as inherently judgmental, and so like a figure like Superman, especially, who is sort of like a symbolic, like platonic representation of like health and strength and virtue and honesty and self-restraint and sobriety, and that is looked on as inherently self-righteous and as inherently judgmental. But it doesn't need to be that way. It's only a certain worldview that makes it that way. And it's like, it kind of reminds me of the biblical story of Cain and Abel, that like, Cain looks at Abel's success, and instead of, treating it, thinking of it as something to emulate and aspire to, that he resents it and he blames Abel, and so you see that a lot. And so with that kind of worldview, then yeah, like a figure like Superman, that's just going to make you feel worse about yourself, and in that perspective, like only like a deeply flawed character will be acceptable.
Okay, a lot of great stuff there. For one, you've seen Jordan Peterson's lecture on Cain and Abel, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll link to that, folks. It's amazing. And for those who don't know, it's that Cain destroys. That's his solution to the existence of somebody that's living up to his ideals better than him, as he destroys him.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny you're saying that, because it's when I was in grad school, I was going through some emotional turmoil, and there was a period where I had like a CD player, like old school CD player, and I had the earbud. I'd be riding the subway, and I would play the soundtrack from the 1978 movie, and like that would get me fired up. So it was far from like, oh no, I could never be that. It was like, no, like it was like, come on, all right, suck it up, Murphy, let's do this, kind of thing. And then if my wife just brought this on my radar, are you aware of like how Ellen DeGeneres' show is like getting canceled and everything?
No, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, she's like the villain of the year, and it's this big thing. And I was going through, and like, there's all kinds of stuff on YouTube about, she treats her guests poorly, and I saw literally not a single accusation of something that she was supposed to have done, as opposed to like maybe some of the producers she works with and what do they do with the staff or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But to me, I think the big thing was like she's successful, but the other thing is because her catchphrase was "be kind to each other" or something like that. Like that's how she would end her show.
Mm.
And so I think there's this perverse thing where, you're going around telling people to be kind, we got to tear you down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And it's so anyway, I thought of that when you were because obviously there's plenty of other people in show business who are way worse objectively, both to their staff and to their, the people they work with, than she is. But they're not going around, because that's the thing. Like what you were saying, like this idea of someone trying to exhibit excellence, like that's somehow judging people. Like I think there's this weird thing where someone who goes out of her way to say, "Hey, everyone, let's be kind to each other," like that's taken as, what do you mean by that? I can do what I want. Who are you to tell me to be kind? You're not so perfect.
Right.
Even though her point was not to say, "Hey, you over there, you're not being kind enough." It was more, what this world needs right now is more kindness. So
yeah,
it's a weird situation. All right. I have you you can go what, another 10 minutes at least?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Superman versus Batman. Go ahead. I don't want to bias it. What do you think?
You mean in a fight or as?
No. The movie. Sorry.
Oh.
because people hated that movie when it came out.
Yeah.
So how did you feel?
Yeah, I also, I mean, it was pretty much an extension of the Man of Steel. I mean, it even like revisits the carnage in Metropolis from Man of Steel, from Batman Bruce Wayne's perspective, and that's what sets up the conflict between the two heroes, and and I think that they pretty much continued to get the Superman character all wrong in the same way. I think they also got the Batman character all wrong too, because even though he is brooding, I think in some way he's closer. Like the classic Batman is closer to Superman than to Iron Man.
Okay.
That he's, because he also, at least in the comics, and in the animated series from the 90s, just never kills. Like he's just bar none, never kills.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He doesn't use guns. And he's also like an omnicompetent character. Like you don't, like he's not like literally superhuman, but he's a master detective. He's a master martial artist. He's just like, he's like a pinnacle of what a mere human like could attain through just like, self-control and self-discipline.
Did you see the thing, Dan? It was Batman versus Darth Vader. Did you see that?
No.
Oh, I got to send it to you. It's awesome. So it's very well done. Like technically, like it looks real, even though I don't know if like fans just made it. But the idea is it's a world where it's the Star Wars and DC worlds overlapping.
Yeah.
And so Darth Vader has somehow captured Superman, and he's being held on like the Death Star in a cell that has like a kryptonite thing, and then Batman has to go rescue him.
Yeah.
And so I'll go ahead and spoil it. So there's a way, like they have alternate endings, so you can see whatever you want to see. But the scenario in which Batman's able to beat Darth Vader, even though Vader has like the Force and stuff, and so you think like, can he just choke? And it was funny in the YouTube comments, people were arguing like, come on, Darth Vader. And the defenders of Batman were saying, no, the deal with Batman is he would never allow himself to be in a situation where he wasn't going to win.
Right.
So yes, there are scenarios where he would lose, but he would just make sure he wouldn't be there. Mm-hmm. So it was like, that's the kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and that raises another issue too, another sort of like deconstruction of the classic hero is what they've done to Luke Skywalker in the Star Wars franchise. That like even Mark Hamill himself remarked that the things that he does in the more recent movies, like that's just not him. That's not the character.
Right. Yeah. I think his exact words were, "That's not my Luke Skywalker."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That Luke Skywalker, like, it's like a coming of age story. So he definitely evolves and develops and gets better. But there's like a core earnestness and heroism that he maintains throughout, that ultimately redeems his fallen father. And then so to basically like undo that, and then he's just like cynical and just throws his lightsaber over a cliff, like, just like lets the evil empire like re-rise, and just like it's not my responsibility to fight it, and catastrophically fails in raising his protege. Like, yeah, I mean it's just really indicative of what creators think is necessary for hero storytelling, and it just isn't, because like even to the degree that these characters are unrealistically perfect, it's like realism isn't everything. Like stories are symbolic, and just like the way myths are, and they serve functions beyond just reflecting exactly what we see in real life. That they represent principles and ideas that watching them makes us understand parts of ourselves better from watching it. And even though, like, obviously we're never going to have the powers of a Kryptonian, and we're never going to be even as perfect as Batman, but it provides a symbolic ideal, a representation of human excellence to always strive for, even though you never quite attain it.
Right. Yeah. Well said. And also, too, you said something earlier about that. Okay. Well, earlier you were saying how society needs rescuing right now, or something like that.
Yeah.
And like we need a Superman. Like. By the way, how do you feel about this? I think the reason all these back up. There's a definite trend in the last 10 years, let's say, of people going to superhero movies and zombie apocalypse movies. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think the public kind of knew this is not going well. Like we're going to, society's going to collapse, and we need heroes to rise up when that happens, because this is not going well. Do you think I'm nuts, or you think
no?
There's something to that?
I think that is really true, and I think that's a pattern, because again, Superman was basically the first superhero. Like, he was the first, with the costume and the secret identity and fighting crime, and like he was the first archetypal superhero, and he emerged in in 1938 at the height of the Great Depression. I don't know if it's like actually the height, but it was really bad then, and I think that he was created by his creators because that was the kind of figure that they found inspiring amid everything that was going on. And it was a hit with the public because it was inspiring with everything that was going on. And in the same way that I think it's no coincidence that, the superhero movies, that they've been going strong for 20 years now. Like, it really, like X-Men, the first X-Men in the year 2000, kind of started it all off. And I don't think it's any coincidence that, shortly after that, 9/11 happened, and ever since then, the superhero movies keep gaining steam, like throughout the wars that followed that, throughout the financial crash of 2007, 2008, the Great Recession after that, and all the way through, a lot of people consider, Trump as traumatic as anything else. And then everything that's going now in 2020, that in times like that, we need that symbolic representation of heroism to understand what heroism is, so that we can live up to it, because that's what the times call for.
Yeah. And the reason I want to have you reemphasize that is because I remember when I was in grad school, I got back into a Superman kick. I told you like that. I was using it to psych myself up and, get fired up, to go into NYU or whatever. And somebody gave me pushback. I wrote articles for LRC or something, and somebody gave me pushback, over email or something. Oh no, we don't, for one thing, they didn't like Superman because he was a goody two shoes bootlicker, whereas Batman was a cool, you know what I mean? In other words, Superman, and in the movies, he goes and puts the flag back in the White House or something, and you know what I mean? He's certainly working with the system. Mm-hmm. And so whereas Batman was the Dark Knight who doesn't work, he works out. So if you're going to be libertarian, then Batman's your guy, not Superman. So that's what the thing. But beyond that, they didn't like the idea, because I had written things along the lines of what you were saying, that this is a good figure to inspire people. And I was oh no, we don't. Comic books are dumb, or superhero movies are dumb, because it teaches people that to solve problems, they need, this external savior to come in and rescue them, as opposed to solving problems themselves. So they thought it sowed the seeds for statism and stuff like that. We need an FDR to come in, or we need an Obama, because the Superman movies have taught us when the times get tough, we need this superhuman person to come in. So how would you respond to that kind of a critique?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some portrayals that have trended in that direction, even from the beginning, that the the 1938 Superman, he was very much sort of like a New Deal type character. That he was. There's even one story where he destroys these slums in order to stimulate the government to rebuild it better. And there's lots of elements like that. And but I don't think that as Superman evolved into like what became the classic like Superman in the public imagination, that it represents that. I think that Superman doesn't represent an other. I think he represents like the best in us. That, you know, especially the Clark Kent Superman dynamic. It's like, I really read. It's probably why I loved the Superman movies when I was a kid. Like I distinctly remember just being like so inspired by the part in Superman 2 where after he had lost his powers, and then he had been bullied by this trucker in a diner.
Yeah, your seat's in there, Four Eyes.
Yeah. And then he got beat up because he didn't have his powers, and then you see him come back at the end when he gets his powers back, and he stands up to the bully, and you know
that's funny. Never seen garbage eat garbage before. I may have seen that movie 30 times.
Wow, yeah, I don't even remember that line. Awesome. And yeah, that I was kind of a nerdy kid, and I was really bookish and slight, and so this notion of like a really like nerdy character like Clark Kent having this inner strength that is something that is really symbolic that people resonate with. And again, it's symbolism. It's not the lesson that like, okay, well, you need to go out and punch bad guys and that's the lesson of Superman. It's the symbolic lesson of like, you may seem meek and mild mannered and weak and ineffectual, but you have something that people don't realize that you
right.
that underneath that starched shirt, conformity culture, that that there's this like heart of gold and this inner potential that is just waiting to show itself, to reveal itself, and to express itself in the world and to do great things. That's just a really powerful story.
Great. Yeah, I love that. And because that's the way I explained it to my son, whose name was Clark, by the way. It was we were watching it. I was showing him because I loved the acting, because in the black and white one where I told you where Superman's sitting there like this and bullets, but that Clark Kent was kind of cocky too.
Yeah.
In that one, and I didn't think that was. I mean, so I got that, but I didn't like that as much as is Richard Donner, was he the director of the 78 one?
Mm-hmm.
That one I thought was perfect, where Clark is like nerdy and whatever, and like this glasses, because it's partly because he's got to throw off suspicion, right? Like in other words, to make sense. Gee, he kind of does look just like Superman with glasses on, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
like he has to act totally like not like a Superman would, or whatever. Whereas we take there's something I need to tell you, Lois, and all of a sudden his voice changes. But so like I was explaining to him, like the reason he can act that goofy and like let Lois kind of walk all over him at work or whatever, and let coworkers, is this elevator going up, and people yelling at him, and he's it's because he knows, by the way, I'm Superman. Like, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, he can let that stuff go because he knows, I'm Superman. Yeah. So I don't need to win this argument with this guy because I'm Superman, and so, and I don't need to show you that I am right now because you just yelled at me and I have to catch the next elevator. When will I show the world who I am? Oh, when it's important. Like when Lois is going to die, that's when I'll reveal myself.
Exactly.
because the audience is knowing, no, oh yeah, that's why he's. So in other words, they don't sit there thinking, man, Clark really needs to stand up for himself because like, no, he's Superman. Just wait, he'll do it when anyway.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Okay. Last thing I wanted to ask you is, oh, by the way, so with the Superman versus Batman, I agree that wasn't a great movie. And my two problems, so one was, like you were saying, the motivations were a little off, but Superman was stupid in that. In other words, Batman should not have gotten the upper hand on him like that. Like, I think they needed to do more. So I agree, the Batman character, if he's going to fight Superman, he would come up with some way that he would win.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't think they did a good enough job of that. Like, they made Superman just be an idiot in that. So
yeah,
that's my concern. However, there was some, like, I heard people complaining about that, like, oh, for most of the movie, like, the fight doesn't even happen until the end. And that seemed dumb. I was like, well, gee, in Rocky, most of the movie is him training and they don't fight to the end. Like, that's
right.
If Batman and Superman are going to fight to the death, there's got to be some development because they're both good guys. Like, so anyway, so some of the criticism with that was goofy. Okay, so the last thing is, why is it, in your opinion, that the Marvel movies are just crushed in the DC franchise? They don't know what they're doing. Like, they can't, like, somebody put it, I forget the exact words, but it was like, the Marvel, they make a movie about what was it? It's not a squirrel. What's from the Guardians of the Galaxy? What's the little guy?
Raccoon.
Yeah. They can make a movie about a talking raccoon and it's awesome. And the DC is like hoping Wonder Woman doesn't bomb. Like, that's weird.
Yeah.
And yet that was the situation. So how do you feel about that?
I wonder if part of it is Marvel, their trouble with copyright. Because a long time ago, Marvel had just really recklessly sold off their rights to their biggest name characters, and not realizing how valuable that they would be, and so that's why, like, there's all sorts of like legal wrangles over the characters, and that's why you have like different studios having different universes. That there's like there's the X-Men franchise, which is completely separate from the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then there's still other franchises, and I think that there's an element of competition that's been driven by that, by the fact that it wasn't quite so monopolized, because ultimately I think that's what the problem is with especially with Superman and with the DC characters in general, is copyright. I think that myths were able to evolve and be like distilled to be like perfect for their time and place and for their culture, because it was basically in the public domain. And so people like were able to tell their own versions of of these classic stories, and through the attrition of time, only the best elements of each story would survive the test of time. And so then, like, after several generations, or like many generations, you'd eventually have like this distilled, like perfect, like literally perfect, but just like really high quality myth that really spoke to people, that really resonated with people. And so, but with copyright, it's like it's monopolized. That that DC has it, and if DC gets it wrong, then we're just out of luck. That there's no competition. Nobody can have their alternate take that might catch fire with the audiences. That shows how to do this character properly. Like they're just free to just bungle as long as they want. And so I think that ultimately that's the problem.
Okay, so that's interesting. You're trying to like give like the systemic explanation. I'm being more like I don't know, tactical or something. Like I think, to me, the fundamental difference in terms of why does the one franchise like just worse, they keep hitting it out of the park, and the other one is the Marvel ones are fun.
Yeah,
like the movies are just fun, and I think casting Robert Downey Jr. was a brilliant movie. Like I think that kind of set the pattern, and they realized like, yes, that's the right blend of like, in other words, the movies are serious. Like this is real. Like like we're really pretending that, you know, all these super people exist and have these mutant powers and stuff, but we're having fun with it because we know, yeah, we're having grown-ups go and watch a comic book movie. Like it's got to be funny. And whereas with the DC, it was just real dark and somber and serious.
Yeah.
And I just think that like you couldn't be, you can't just be sad and serious for 2 hours. Like, no, I need this to be kind of light and fast paced.
I totally agree with that. I think the Marvel movies, that they're just balanced, that they have serious moments too. And they touch on, you know, ideas and controversies that apply to like our real world in contemporary times. But they also they're also fun and funny and have jokes, and they also have just like adventure and just like, you know, less serious adventure and more kind of just like happy, glorious heroics. And yeah, so it's just a better experience.
Mm-hmm. How much time do you have? Because I had one other one if you got time.
Sure, yeah, I have time.
Okay. When you were explaining, it occurred to me like what you think they got wrong with Superman and how they decided, oh, let's take it in the direction of like crippling him and whatever. I did notice some of that in the Marvel ones, specifically with I guess Infinity War and what is it, Endgame? Is that what it was called?
Mm-hmm.
Where they maybe. Yeah, with the like they kind of took the Hulk and Thor out of commission.
Yeah,
like I guess what was it, Infinity War, where the Hulk gets beaten up in the beginning? Am I getting the movies right?
Yeah,
is that the one where it starts up and the Hulk's ready to go, and then Thanos just kicks the crap out of him?
Yes,
and then so he gets zoomed back, and then the Hulk just is hiding. Like it's got to be, you know, Banner in the Iron Man suit or something because the Hulk won't even come out.
Right.
So that was, and I guess were they trying to show like the Hulk's never really been beaten up before, and so he's immature, like, okay, fine. And maybe like for the plot development, it's kind of like, well, the Hulk's so strong, we kind of need to take him out. Otherwise, unless Thanos is literally in the scene, the Avengers always win. I don't know if that was the reason for it, but they did that. And then of course, Thor getting, you know, the dad bod in the next one and being all, you know, whiny and stuff. So how did you feel? Did you think they were making a similar mistake, or did you think it worked there in those applications?
Well, I think that, I think that it is regrettable in a lot of ways. I think that they're able to afford to do that because they have so many other characters to fill the traditional heroic roles. But I do think that especially Thor, because like with his arc, he you know, he in the first movie it was kind of like a Henry IV kind of thing, like an irresponsible Hal, like, you know, becomes a responsible adult and like lives up to the throne that he's supposed to inherit from his royal father, and where he learns to be a hero, and he, you know, there's this line of like, you know, that's what heroes do. And even in Ragnarok, like you know, you see him like in spite of Valkyrie's like really intense cynicism, like he is like a huge contrast to that. It's like, no, like you can't just wallow in alcoholism and give up, you know, as bad as things look, you know, and this is after he had already lost his hammer. He had been like, had his hair shorn like Samson. And he's still, you know, he's still like not giving up, and he's like super stalwart.
He's still Thor,
right? Right.
Yeah.
But then they just kept grinding him down with just tragedy after tragedy, and eventually it becomes like it just becomes bad storytelling. It's like it's one thing for you know for the Uncle Ben to die, but then to like, you know. It kind of reminds me of Harry Potter. It's just like, okay, like Harry Potter had his like, you know, original formative like tragedy in his life, but then they kept like compounding all the tragedies, like where it's like every father figure like that he comes across in his life. It's like, okay, they kill him off too. And it just becomes gratuitous after a certain point. And I think that's what happened with Thor. And it was funny, like the Big Lebowski version of Thor, like Hemsworth is a really funny actor, and he did a really good job with that. But yeah, the blubbering, it went too far. And I think that, especially given like, the previous arc, that like, there's only so much that like you can have, like, repetitions of the same arc of like, he already had his, abandoning irresponsibility and embracing responsibility. And so just to have him just like, recycle that and have to relearn the same lessons over again, it doesn't serve the function, that story, that of like sort of the developmental and edifying and educational function that hero stories are supposed to have.
Right. Okay, well, I think that's a good place to end. So, folks, my guest has been Dan Sanchez, and for links to all the stuff we've been talking about, we'll go to bobmurphyshow.com/141. Dan, thanks so much for joining us.
It was great to talk with you, Bob. Thank you.
You've just experienced another episode of The Bob Murphy Show, the podcast promoting free markets, free minds, and grateful souls. For more information and to subscribe to this podcast, visit bobmurphyshow.com.